yeah.
In a league of dynasties and giants, the Vancouver Canucks were a mere footnote, an expansion afterthought skating through mediocrity. But in the 1974-75 season, something changed. For the first time, the Canucks made the playoffs. They didn't just sneak in, they won their division. This is the story of an improbable team that made a whole city believe.
With you, yes we are. Canucks, we're with you. We're really, really with you, yes we are.
The Canucks may emerge as the biggest story of 1974. However, we'll be well into 1975 before we know for sure. At this time next year, it will be fun to look back on the final half of this NHL schedule. Who'd have ever guessed that the Vancouver Canucks would rise to the top of their division and spend Christmas and New Year's in first place?
38 wins, 32 losses, and 10 ties. 86 points, barely good enough for third in other divisions, but in the wide-open Smythe division, it meant first place. The Canucks had no captain, no superstar, and at one point, a 9-game losing streak. But what they did have was heart, depth, and a little bit of playoff luck. Thanks to a new playoff format, division winners bypassed the preliminary round. Vancouver got a bye and a brutal draw. They were reseeded and thrown to the Wolves, the Montreal Canadiens. The Canucks engine was Andre Boudria, quiet, skilled, and the team's leading scorer with 78 points. Don Lever, their goal-scoring machine, notched 38 and was named team MVP. Gary Suitcase Smith, the league's most overworked goalie, played 72 games, won 32, and was the team's emotional backbone. He wasn't flashy, just fearless. Dennis Ververgaert battled injury, still scoring at nearly a point per game pace. Tracy Pratt policed the ice with 145 penalty minutes. Dennis Kearns and Bob Daly locked things down on the blue line. This wasn't a team of stars, this was a team of stories. So, the reward for a division title? A quarterfinal date with the Montreal Canadiens, a 113-point juggernaut tied with Buffalo and Philly for league best. Montreal's lineup featured multiple Hall of Famers, including Ken Dryden, Serge Savard, Jacques Lemaire, and Guy Lafleur, who had 119 points in 70 games that season at the age of 23. Game 1, Ken Spider Lockett started in net.
With the sensational Guy Lafleur, number 10, firing a shot over Lockett's head that bounced off the glass behind him and right back out to Lafleur, who quickly puts Montreal in the lead once again. The puck out of their own end with Chris Odlofsson carrying down ice. And after Dryden makes one save, right wing Paulin Bordelot is left untouched in front of the Montreal goalie and bangs in the first Canuck score at 15:40 to cut the Canadian lead to 1 goal.
The result, a 6-2 loss. Game 2, Gary Smith returns. Vancouver stuns the Forum. Gary Monahan scores the game winner. Canucks win 2-1. The city erupts. The Canucks have their first ever playoff win against all odds. Games 3 and 4, close, but Montreal's firepower proves too much. In Game 5, overtime, a fluke bounce that ends in a Canadiens win, and the dream for the Canucks ending.
Back to Lafleur, ready for the goal! As the Canadians celebrate, a dejected Gary Smith finally makes it to his feet. And I think a dejected Dennis Kearns has left the ice, because I believe the replay of this goal is going to show that it was deflected into the Vancouver net by the defenseman Kearns.
But the story doesn't actually end there. One of the biggest stories of the season was Gary Smith. Nicknamed Suitcase for having played on so many teams, he became a legend in Vancouver. He was erratic, charismatic, and tough as nails. Some say he deserved the Hart Trophy over Bobby Clarke that year. Fans loved him. They made banners, they voted him into the All-Star game. He didn't ask for any credit, he just kept making saves. Without Suitcase, the Canucks likely don't make the playoffs in that year. Gary Smith had one of the most unusual goalie careers in NHL history. Over 14 seasons, he played for 9 different teams, never staying long and delivering wildly varying results. But in 1972, while with the Chicago Blackhawks, Smith posted a .911 save percentage and took home the Vezina Trophy despite playing in only 28 games. 3 years later, at age 30, and in his second year in Vancouver, Smith put in the work of his life. In the 74-75 season, he played a career-high 72 games, won 32 of them, and finished with an .895 save percentage. It wasn't his flashiest year, but it was his toughest and perhaps his best. Smith didn't just stop pucks, he carried the franchise on his back, and for one wild season, the fans of Vancouver carried him right back. In 1975, 15,630 fans packed the Pacific Coliseum every night. In a city still finding its hockey voice, the Canucks gave it something to cheer for. This was more than a team, it was Vancouver's team. From false starts to playoff pride, this was a civic moment.
They're the ones. They bring the Coliseum to its feet.
Behind the scenes, the foundation was starting to take shape. In the 1974 NHL draft, the Canucks selected Ron Siedelbauer, Mike Rogers, and a fourth rounder named Harold Sneps, who would become a Canucks icon and eventually join the Ring of Honor. The 1974-75 season wasn't just a flash, it was a spark for this franchise. There were no parades, there were no cups, but in 1975, the Canucks didn't need those. They needed respect. They needed proof that they belonged. And that year, they got it. This team, without a captain, built on glue guys, carried by a goalie, showed Vancouver what hockey could be. 50 years later, the 1974-75 Canucks still echo, not for what they won, but for what they started. So while you might remember 1982 as the year Vancouver first fell in love with the Canucks, it was the often glossed over 1974-75 Canucks that first brought NHL playoff hockey to Vancouver.
Steps it over the line.
Canucks, we're with you. We're really, really with you. Yes, we are. Canucks, we love you. We really, really